These are the faces of cancer victims. Now you might ask why they're smiling and why they seem so healthy and alive. They certainly don't look like they're dying. Well, these are the faces of people who were diagnosed as having cancer or some other degenerative disease, but who sought alternative therapies to alleviate their problem. I know because I'm one of them. My name is Dennis Hunt, and I'd like to tell you about my experience at the St. Jude International Clinic in Tijuana. You'll also meet Jimmy Keller, the administrator of the clinic, and several former patients who, like myself, have begun new lives. About a year ago, I found out that, or was watching some lumps that had been growing and diagnosed or misdiagnosed, and was recommended to get a biopsy at a regional hospital in Southern California. The biopsy turned out to be lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And after further diagnostic studies, it was determined that the cancer had gone also into the bone marrow. I felt, rather than jump into a program that was recommended by my first doctor, that it was prudent for me to go and seek some additional resources. So we got a second opinion from another major respected hospital in Southern California who not only verified that the diagnosis was correct, but also recommended basically the same type of traditional therapy. And explained to him that I felt I still wanted to meet with some other minds that had some expertise in this area. And they recommended and set up an appointment at Stanford Medical. So we went to Stanford, got it diagnosed, got the CAT scans and the blood tests and the biopsies reviewed again. And they certainly confirmed that it was, in fact, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and that it had gone into the bone marrow. They also recommended that because of the stage I was a candidate for their monoclonal antibody study. And although it required another trip back to Stanford a month later and another biopsy, I felt that it was in my best interest to go ahead and try this new research program. I did that and found out about 30 days later that the study itself, or the research, monoclonal research, was not going to work in my case. They had some complications and was unable to develop this special antibody for me. So we decided not to do anything immediately, kind of went up in the mountains and did some thinking and praying about the situation, and felt that there must be some other course of action. And through the course of events, we were introduced to a friend who told us about an alternative program that was seemingly having a tremendous amount of success down in Tijuana, which kind of scared us at first, the thought of going down there. And we looked with a lot of reservation and hesitation at this amazing tape and all these beautiful faces and interesting stories, and it would just compelled us to really look into this program. And we contacted a friend who's now we regard as a close personal friend, and he volunteered to take us down and introduce us to Jimmy Keller. There was a lot of immediate good chemistry. We met several people that were in the program, and we met a lot of happy people, all of whom had been diagnosed as having cancer. And we determined that really it was in our best interest and my best interest to not go through with the traditional chemotherapy or radiation programs, but to get involved. So in October, I got in the program and went 3 weeks every day, 6 days a week at the clinic.
Welcome to St. Jude International Clinic. My name is Jimmy Keller, and I'm the director here. And I want to let you know a little about how I got to this position. First, back in 1968, I was diagnosed to have had black malignant melanoma. It came from a black mold in my left ear. It metastasized down to a golf ball-sized tumor that was present on my earlobe on the left side. And not knowing anything about alternative therapies, not knowing that there was any other way to go, the doctors told me that I had a 50-50 chance if I had immediate radical surgery. I agreed to it. I signed the papers, and this is what they did me. Yeah. They took not only the ear out, but you can see they got the muscle out of my neck. This was known as a radical neck, and they took many, many lymph glands out, and they said that they had gotten it all. And of course, after that, I went home from the hospital to recover, and everything seemed to be going well. I was told that the mutilation that was done on me was the price I had to pay for getting rid of my tumor. But in October, I noticed that I had a little node right back here, something that hadn't been there before, and of course, that meant probably that my disease had returned. So when I went back to the institution, they told me that I needed more treatment and that my disease had come back. And the treatment they wanted then was radiation treatment, and of course, the surgeon had already told me that radiation did not work on melanoma, that it was completely radio-resistant and resistant to chemotherapy. So at that point, I decided not to have any further orthodox treatment, and I left. And fortunately for me, my mother and father were praying, and they were making novenas to St. Jude, saint of the impossible. And although I wasn't saying the prayers, my mother and father were, and between Christmas and New Year's of 1968, we got an anonymous letter. It was postmarked San Antonio, and we didn't know anyone in San Antonio, so we considered it a miracle, and it told about a clinic in Dallas. And Mother immediately made an appointment for me without me even knowing, called me up and told me about it. And I told her I didn't want to go, but much just to please her and my father, I made the trip. And of course, when I got to the clinic in Dallas, I found that there were people who were being helped. And I had noticed quite a difference between the people who were at the institution where I'd had my surgery, where everything was going down, down, down. Here there was hope, and people were telling me that things were getting better, and some people were there that had had some help. And I started this treatment, and of course, I felt like the treatment helped me, and it also opened the avenue for many, many other facets, where I found out that there was a whole world of alternative treatments that I didn't know about. So I improved with the treatment I had in Dallas, and of course, the new world that I spoke of opened up for me, and I started investigating everything and anything that was helpful for cancer. I found out that there were probably 20 to 30 modalities that I could find that were being used for cancer that were non-toxic and that were to some degree successful. And of course, I started combining different things together. We started putting together the lateral. We even sent people down to different clinics, and we'd advise them to go to different clinics and get one thing and then another thing. And we found that a combination of things sometimes worked better than just one thing. And as this went on, we found that we had people who came back from the clinics, and they needed people to give them shots, and they needed help. And it was hard to get medical people at that time to help people. And since someone had helped me, I decided, well, I would learn to do it, and I'd help the people as they came back. And then before we knew it, we had people who were too ill to go down to the clinics. And the next thing we knew the protocols, and we started applying some of the protocols to these people. And of course, all during this time, I had a business that was doing very well, and it allowed me to have the free time and to have the funds to do this. And of course, we always operated at a non-profit situation. In fact, it cost us a great deal of money to do this. And as we did this, we found that people were getting better, and that the people, as they came from the clinics, always wanted advice, and people would call us. And so soon my home became a mecca for cancer patients who were doing alternative treatments. And nothing succeeds like success, because the more it happened, the more people came, and pretty soon we were overcrowded with people. And of course, this started stirring up some objections in the medical community in the local area, and some pressure was exerted to stop what we were doing, and although I had a lot of political connections, these connections kept me from getting any criminal charges against me. But I was advised that probably it was best, if we were going to do anything like we were doing, to go down to Mexico, because that's what everyone did. And so we went down to Matamoros, and we found we were successful there, but we found that the conditions weren't as favorable as they were in Tijuana. And after investigating the Tijuana area, we found that there were many clinics around and a much better atmosphere to have a clinic or to have a situation like we had, so we moved over to Tijuana.
When I started in the program, the first couple of days I felt that something was happening, but it was more an internal or a feeling rather than anything physical that I could put my hands on. At the end of 3 weeks, completing the program was grueling, and I was so drained I didn't, the program itself was very tough. And it was about 30 days after completion of the program that I really started feeling better than I had in quite a while. My endurance seemed to improve, which to this date I seem to have far more endurance than I've had for years.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Kerr, and I live in Huntington Beach, California. In October of 1983, I was diagnosed as having early stages of cancer of the uterus. When my doctor called me at the office and told me about my condition, he told me that this is something that I don't fool around with, that I should have a complete abdominal hysterectomy, and I should have it immediately. I told my doctor that I was disturbed about it, and that I needed to talk to my husband, and that I needed to get a second opinion. I consulted a second doctor, which happened to be a friend of my husband's, and he recommended to me that the same diagnosis was correct, and I should have a complete hysterectomy, and he volunteered to do that surgery. After thinking about it and realizing that there is a risk and a danger of being in a hospital, and also there are side effects to having a hysterectomy, I decided against that surgery. Earlier in 1983, I learned about Jimmy Keller through a former patient who had obtained excellent results. So I went to his clinic for the treatment, and it's a very specialized treatment where the clinic selects the proper treatment for you as an individual. And it is dealing with the immune system, and along with that is the vitamin mineral supplements, the amino acid treatment, the complete body detoxification, and the positive mental attitude. Upon my return home, I continued with the program, and I waited about 1.5 years before I decided to go to another doctor for a biopsy. And the reason I decided to do that was to satisfy my well-meaning friends and family. I went to the doctor, and she did a biopsy and sent that biopsy to the lab. And when the report came back, she gave me a call and said there was no signs of cancer. So I said to her, "Do you feel that I need a hysterectomy at this time?" And she said to me, "No, of course not. You're fine."
After spending 3 weeks with Jimmy Keller, about 30 days later, I went back to the American doctors and had a follow-up blood test done. And it was determined at that time that the blood counts, particularly the white blood count, which had been below the normal range, was up substantially well into the normal range, and other vital blood signs had shown improvement. The tumors themselves had shrank in size somewhat from what they had been 60 to 90 days prior. And when I discussed this with the American doctor and explained to him, without telling him that I'd been to Mexico naturally, but telling him that I had changed my diet and that I had elected not to start any traditional type programs, but to change my diet, he basically downplayed the whole idea that diet had anything to do with it and suggested that this was just a case of spontaneous remission and although unexplained, can happen. However, I feel that it was, and my wife and family and people that know us are firmly convinced that the turnaround was during this time spent in Mexico.
Hi, my name is Libby Hodges, and I'm from Costa Mesa, California. In January of 1985, I was diagnosed by the medical profession of having an inoperable brain tumor, and they gave me less than a month to live. At that time, I had lost my sense of smell, taste, feeling. I was unable to drive a car. I had dropped down to about 89 pounds, couldn't taste food, couldn't smell food, couldn't get filled up. I was actually starved to death. And I went to see Jimmy on my birthday, and I went ahead, I just went down to talk to him, but I went ahead and took a treatment that day, and I had results my very first treatment. In fact, about halfway through the treatment, I noticed that the room started clearing up, the color started getting brighter. And what happened during this treatment, when the serum that he uses, it went directly to the brain areas, and all this grabbing sensation took place. And it was like somebody had walked up behind me and slapped me upside the back of my head. And all this grabbing was taking place, so he waited a little bit until it subsided, and he'd come back, and he'd give me a little bit more, and he'd come back, and it would come back and grab me again. And this grabbing kept taking place for, it seemed like 15, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden the room started clearing up, the colors started getting brighter, their faces started getting brighter, and I knew then that I was having results.
When someone comes into the clinic to be treated, the first thing we do is make a microscopic examination of the blood. And this way we determine many, many factors about the blood, and we can determine whether there are tendencies toward malignancy or whether they're candida and deficiencies in minerals or vitamins and so forth. We also do a check with our radionics instrument, and we kind of make a balance between the two of them so that we see if we agree both ways with the two of them. And of course, the microscopic examination of the blood gives us a record of the blood when the patient begins, because we do the same thing at the end of the treatment and thereby compare the two. Okay, the treatment may consist of a number of different modalities. We use the Panama gas, for example, which is something rather new in this part of the country. And this gas was used successfully down in Panama and gives the gas has an affinity for the malignant cell, so that as a person breathes the gas in, it enters the bloodstream through the lung and it goes to the malignant cell, having an affinity for the malignant cell, misses it. And of course, we use other modalities, which give an IV, also have an affinity for the malignant cell. We use certain immune serums, which cause the body to turn its reserve energy on the malignancy and also cause the body to do rapid repair. We use a number of polypeptides. We use live cell treatments, where we're using the live fetal cells. All these things are done in conjunction with a total program, which is being tailored for the person. And each person, before they're given any injection or any IV is mixed, is tested with kinesiology to see that this is the proper thing for them.
One of the big things that happened when I was at Stanford, and of course that was the third opinion in the third medical facility to suggest that chemotherapy was the recommended protocol. And they gave me a book called Chemotherapy and You. This particular book talks about all the diabolical side effects from chemotherapy, and it was just sort of a survival instinct, I think, that made me feel like this wasn't the answer in my case, that getting better by putting poisons into my body that were really going to break down my natural immune system and create numerous other further complications, including kidney and sores in the mouth and all that sort of thing. I just didn't feel like that was the way out of this thing for me personally.
In the summer of 1986, I was diagnosed as having breast cancer. It was actually a cancer that was a mound on my chest. I was told that it was inoperable, it had gone too far, and they had given me approximately, maybe, the doctor said, 6 months to live. That it was so far gone that they didn't want to give me radiation or chemo. They did not want to put me through that. My husband and I sought out alternative methods and were led to the Ambassador Hotel, where we had heard about many clinics there, and we heard people speak in their behalf. We saw a video of Jimmy Keller, who was not a doctor and could not be there because he was in Tijuana in his clinic and could not ever come back to the United States. We had heard his incredible story about his own recovery, how he had treated himself of black melanoma. I saw these beautiful, glowing, exciting faces that had been treated by Jimmy. I was so impressed with their radiance, this healthy glow about them. And I said to my husband then, I said, this is the place I am going to go. All I can say is, here I am. I have not one cell of cancer in my body. And I will tell you this, that it was found that I had cancer. My head was filled with cancer. I had cancer in my legs, in my chest, and in my breasts. And I do not have one cell of cancer now.
I had a very severe case of cancer in the breast. I'd had a pain in my back that had been a burning, stabbing pain for almost 2 years, and I related it to an occupational hazard of my job and went for chiropractic adjustments regularly, but nothing ever alleviated the problem. Within 45 minutes after my first treatment from Jimmy, that pain went away and has never returned. And it was something that was a nightmare to me that I had lived with for 2 years. I had very tight chest pains. I had coughed up blood a few times. I had a golf ball-sized tumor under my left arm. I had lost the hearing partially in my left ear, and there were sensations moving up the left side of my head. I thought that the teeth on the left lower side of my jaw were abscessing, and miraculously enough, and I know it does seem like a miracle, after my treatment, all of these problems have been totally alleviated. It was as if whenever I began the treatment in Mexico, it was as if someone had drawn a line around the affected area of my body, and it felt like 1,000 tiny little fingers in there, like Pac-Man, as Libby used to say, going to work.
What I liked about the clinic was that each patient is treated on an individual basis. No one was given the same treatment. Because what's good for me is not good for somebody else. And so we were tested every single day. We were tested to make sure we weren't allergic to anything that we were taking, plus in our diet. There were many vitamin supplements and different injections, and sometimes you'd spend the whole day at the clinic. It just depended on each day. In 3 weeks, I was told that my cancer was gone and that I could go home. I elected to stay an extra week because I didn't realize at the time that I had some brain damage and my reading and my speech had been affected. And I was still having a little bit of problem with that, so I stayed for another week, and that really made a difference.
The first couple of days I was sort of dismayed and I was discouraged because I found this clinic not like the hospitals in Los Angeles and not quite the clinical procedure. But the people laughing and the general love from Jimmy Keller and his group, and the feeling that everybody's interested in your well-being, wanting you to get better, and interested not just the applications of the medicines, but making sure you're eating right, making sure that you're spiritually and mentally preparing yourself to fight a long, dreaded uphill fight with cancer. Now, I've only been here 3 weeks. I get taken 2 blood tests, and my acid phosphatase level is down, which is a prime indicator of prostate cancer or its stage, and the acid phosphatase was down 2 points. Now that's a very good sign. I had another blood test done with a visual blood sample, and it showed no active cancer cells. On Jimmy's kinesis type test here, he seems to think I'm clear. I feel very, very good. Matter of fact, today's my last day, and I'm on my way back home to see my wife and family. I'll be back here for a few. I'm actually looking forward to coming back, as a matter of fact, for the booster shots, which I'll come back for next week, and get to see all the people here who I dearly love now, and I feel sort of like I'm leaving home, though I've only been here 3 weeks, and I'm glad to go home, but I'm also be glad to get back because I think what I'm doing here and the things that Jimmy has shown me and his staff has shown me is beneficial for not just this cancer, but for the rest of my life.
We believe that that a patient, when they're here, if they have a physical ability to recover, must also have a mental ability to recover. So what we do is we realize that people are programmed. And of course that cancer is an incurable disease in the United States, and so that this programming is into our people. So that when the cancer patient is told they have cancer, you don't have to tell them they're going to die, they automatically begin dying, see. So what we have to get is that subconscious reprogrammed, so that the subconscious means that you're getting well and that you are well, and that cancer is not this devastating disease that you're going to die of, because no matter what we do for them physically, if we get rid of the tumor, the pain goes away, they feel good, they go back into a negative environment, and if the subconscious keeps saying, well, you had cancer, you're going to die, and this is something that they have no control over. So what we do is reprogram the subconscious. So I'm supposed to have been dead 18 years ago, and I had the most terrible disease there is, and certainly I should have been dead. But one of the things I did back then was to reprogram my own subconscious, so that now I'm programmed not to die of this cancer. So I can't die of this cancer because I'm programmed not to. And that's what we try to do with the patient.
I realized 4 years ago that I had complications for many reasons, headaches and the inability to digest, and I am in nursing. I was working at that time as a nurse for an internist at Stanford in Palo Alto. So I went through the regular medical science procedures. I saw a breast surgeon and the internist. They wanted me to have a bilateral mastectomy, both breasts removed, and I did have mammograms and biopsies. And I guess because I'm in nursing, I chose to do some research. And in August, I'll be 4 years that I've been coming back and forth to Jimmy. My cancer did metastasize. It moved into a lymph node and into the bone. And I feel that I am as imbalanced, that my cancer is as regressed as it will be. I'm not one that says anyone's healed. I more or less believe that cancer is held in check, and that if we follow the correct diets and keep out of stress, stressful situations are very harmful, and that with the help of someone like Jimmy, who has these fantastic serums and this whole immune boost, it's just immune therapy really, and after all, immune therapy is what heals the whole body. So regardless of whether a person's here for cancer or arthritis or any degenerative disease, this type of therapy can do nothing but help.
But I feel a lot better in myself. My blood pressure was very low when I came. It's gone higher now. And also I have much more colour in my face. I had a body scan, a complete body scan from head to toe, and I had a bone scan. And there was no sign whatsoever of cancer. Even around the scar tissue, it was completely healed, and there was no sign of any cancer cells whatsoever. I feel wonderful. I think I look a lot better than I did. Lots of people have told me I look 20 years younger, and I do feel the energy I've got, it's just marvelous.
It's been 4.5 years now since I've had cancer treatment at Jimmy Keller's, and I want you to know that I'm feeling wonderful. Even my husband, who was a skeptic, he's an attorney, now feels that if he were diagnosed as having cancer, that he would now go to Jimmy Keller. Thank God for Jimmy Keller. I love him.
It's been over 3 years, and I'm doing well and doing fantastic. And I'd like to add one more thing about the clinic. There's a lot of love going on in that clinic. The patients all look out for each other. We all help each other, and there's a lot of healing taking place. So I feel very comfortable in recommending anyone go down to see Jimmy Keller, because he's a real healer.
As far as my own situation in present time, I am back to work. I'm working a full-time job. I am very healthy. I'm on a vigorous exercise program and a diet program on a daily basis. My disposition is great. I know that I will never die of cancer, and I have Jimmy Keller to thank for that.
In walking into Jimmy's clinic, you don't see people that are giving up their lives. You see people that are starting their lives all over again. A new beginning.
So now it's been 6 months since I've been down there, and I've been fully active. In fact, carry a completely full life. The tumors have gone down, and I certainly feel that it's due to the fact that Jimmy Keller and his treatment and program has made the difference in our life. I would highly recommend that anybody that has cancer or some other type of degenerative disease should certainly put some credence and check this out, investigate thoroughly before making a decision that there is only one form of treatment available, because I do believe that there's something better than the traditional chemotherapy and radiation, and there's a lot of hope for people that go down there.